What if Max Planck was right, not as an idea, but as a verdict? Then what follows is not comfortable, because if he was right, everything you believe yourself to be was implanted. You are not merely a body living in a real world. You are the origin pretending to be the effect. And everything around you, absolutely everything, does not happen to you. It happens from you. If Planck was right, and he was, then your identity is a construct, a narrative repeated until it felt true. And the world you were taught to respect is only the surface of something much deeper and much more disturbing. Since childhood, you have been conditioned to see yourself as small, separate, limited to a body of flesh, trapped in a dead, mechanical, indifferent universe. A universe where you react, obey, survive, but never create. This belief was not a mistake. It was training. Then came the man who broke the spell. The founder of quantum physics did not suggest, he asserted. Max Planck declared that matter is not fundamental. It does not underpin reality. It is not the basis of anything. What underpins everything is consciousness. Matter is the final stage, a residue, a belated consequence of the mind observing itself until it forgets who it is. This is not spirituality. It is not symbolism. It is hard, cold, scientific ontology, coming from one of the greatest physicists in history. If this is true, then the universe did not create you. You created the universe so you would not remember what you truly are. And the question that remains is not whether this is real. It is, what happens when you remember? And if this is true, then your identity was never in the body. It was never in the name. It was never in the story you tell about yourself. It has always been consciousness. And this is where the deception lies. You suffer because you live as an effect. You feel attacked by life, wounded by people, imprisoned by circumstances. Everything seems to be against you, but it only seems so because they convinced you of a silent lie, that reality exists independently of you. Quantum physics has shown exactly the opposite. At the deepest level of existence, there are no solid objects. There are no fixed things. There is no stable world waiting to be found. What exists are fields of probability, equations, potentials in suspension. Before observation, there is no fact. There is only possibility. Nothing has happened yet. Nothing has chosen a form. What transforms possibility into an event is not time, is not chance, is not matter. It is interaction. And interaction requires observation. Observation requires consciousness. Without consciousness, reality does not collapse. It does not decide. It does not define itself. This destroys the most dangerous belief of all, the most deeply implanted one. The idea that you are a late effect of the universe, a biological accident, a byproduct of matter. If consciousness were merely an effect of the brain, if it arose afterwards as a consequence, physics itself simply would not work the way it works. The universe depending on observation and, at the same time, consciousness being irrelevant is an impossible contradiction. The truth is more unsettling. You did not appear after reality. Reality appears through you. And when this is understood, not intellectually, but existentially, the role of the victim begins to crumble, because an effect never creates. But the origin always creates. Mathematical laws have no weight. They have no charge. They do not occupy space. And yet, they govern everything with absolute precision. This is the paradox that Max Planck faced without looking away. And that was why he was direct, almost uncomfortably direct. We cannot assume matter as the basis of reality, because it depends on something prior to exist, to organize itself, to obey any law. In simple terms, and this is what scares, the universe is not born of chaos. It is born of an order, but of an order that is not material. Now, breathe, and let this touch you deep inside. Because if consciousness is the foundation, then you are not inside the universe like an object lost amongst others. The universe happens in relation to consciousness. This does not mean that you choose every event consciously, as if you were pressing invisible buttons. That is a shallow interpretation. What this means is deeper and more disturbing. The state of consciousness you hold functions as a silent filter. It does not create all possibilities, but selects which of them collapse into reality. Amongst infinite potentials, something is chosen, and this choice is not random. This is the point that almost no one understands, because it destroys both chance and the ego's illusory control. You are not a powerless passenger, but neither are you a tyrant of reality. You are the field where reality decides how it will manifest itself. And whilst this is not seen, life seems like an attack, seems like injustice, seems like something happening against you. But when this begins to be perceived, even if for an instant, it becomes impossible to go on believing that you are merely matter reacting to the world. The question ceases to be, why is this happening to me? And transforms into something much more dangerous. What within me allowed this to happen? And this question cannot be unheard once it arises. You do not create reality by repeating positive phrases. That is a comfortable distraction. Reality does not respond to words. It responds to identity, to the way you observe, to the internal state you hold even when no one is looking. In quantum physics, this has an exact name: collapse of the wave function. A system remains in superposition, multiple possibilities coexisting, until a measurement happens. And here's the detail that is almost always ignored. Measurement is not just an apparatus. It is an act of interaction, defined by a context of observation. Now translate this into your life. Whilst you live on autopilot, reacting out of fear, out of defense, out of the sensation of separation, you collapse a world coherent with those states. It is not punishment. It is not reward. It is physical coherence. The universe does not judge. It responds. It mirrors the pattern you hold consistently, silently, unconsciously. That is why certain experiences repeat themselves. Not because you deserve it, but because the observer remains the same, and here another rupture arises. The true identity of the human being is not the ego that reacts. The ego is merely a mechanism, a psychological survival software created to operate in a world that it believes to be hostile. It anticipates attacks, creates defenses, constructs narratives of control, but it does not observe reality. It only reacts to it. The real identity is that which perceives the ego reacting. Silent, prior, unthreatened. The consciousness that observes fear without being fear, that perceives thought without being thought. And when this begins to be seen, not as a concept, but as a direct experience, something shifts. You cease living from the ego and start living from the observer. And the world that collapses from there, inevitably, can no longer be the same, because reality always obeys the identity that is looking at it. Always. This observer is not anxious. It is not needy. It is not a victim. It does not ask. It does not beg. It does not react. It only perceives. And to perceive, at the deepest level of reality, is already a creative act. That is why Plunk was so clear, not as a belief, not as a spiritual metaphor, but as the structure of reality. All matter depends on consciousness. Now, look at your life with brutal honesty. The patterns repeat. The pains return with different faces.